Hello, welcome everybody. July 21st, 2021. Thanks for joining us Hump Day Hangout today. I'm Terry McGrath. We've got Scott Thompson's here, one of our regulars, and we are down a few members of our crew. I think Chief Lasky, Chief Salka had some commitments to attend to today. Bobby is actually, I believe, in Indianapolis preparing for the greatest show on earth. So FDIC fastly approaching August 2nd through the 7th in Indianapolis. If you haven't checked into that, you better do so quickly. But anyway, that program is scheduled and ready to kick off this year, and everybody's certainly excited about that. Scott, I think we talked about this last time. You are presenting at FDIC this year, right?
Yeah, I'm doing a workshop Tuesday morning, training basics and essentials from the candidate to the chief. This will be my third or fourth year of doing it, so I'm looking forward to going back and getting back into things.
Excellent. Well, like I said, I know that this has been, well, we're just happy it's back, but the having to move some dates around, but I think after it all flushed out in the wash, this is for the best, and will certainly make things a lot easier to manage for the staff, and thus be a much better program this year because of that change around in the date. But anyway, again, August the 2nd through the 7th, and you can check into those details. Today on our show, Scott and I talked this past week, and he brought up the idea of talking about mentoring, and we've used the term or the phrase or the idea a lot in various topics and shows that we've done, and it's certainly a hot topic that's well talked about. But Scott had a bit of a different thought on it and referenced some literature that he's been responsible for and utilized in his agency in the colony. And so we've brought on a couple of members of Colony Fire to help us through this and talk a little bit about what Scott has done. And I'll let Scott speak to this information is out there and available for anyone who wants to take a look at it. It is a really good read. It's got some great resources and information in it. And so I'm gonna kick it to Scott. If you want to introduce Chief Rice and Captain Grahl and kind of talk about what you've done as it relates to your experience and how you've rolled this out in the colony, and we're just going to talk about that experience today and hopefully share some good information with everybody out there. So Scott, you want to talk a little bit about what the kind of the base document, if you will, and kind of what led to all of this and where you guys are at.
Sure. Let me introduce first Chief Rice and Chief Grahl just a little more formally. Chief Rice is our A-Shift Battalion. He came to us from another organization and really has embraced what we're trying to do. He's also serves as our training coordinator. We don't have a full-time training quarter, so Chief Rice kind of does double duty. And then Captain Grahl, who is also on A-Shift, works for Chief Rice, is one of our original squad captains of Squad 18, and wanted to get him on because, we have high standards throughout the organization, but our truck and our squad people are I'm going to say, handpicked to some degree, but we expect the officers there to really uphold the integrity of those companies and the standards, while all of our companies do an awesome job. So I thought it'd be great to have them on. But Terry, this whole thing really started back in Louisville. I guess I've kind of always realized that mentoring existed. I had a great mentoring experience when I went into Plano. I went into a special ops station, and it was a large group, and they mentored me and did a great job. I didn't really recognize it as such. And so I kind of paid attention to those selective mentoring things that went on. But when I came to Louisville and started working for Rick, he really was the one who got me thinking about formal mentoring. And so that was really the first generation. What we're going to talk about today is really a third generation model. And I call it a model because successful mentoring programs can't be a policy. It can't be a procedure. It can't be something where the chief shows up Monday morning staff meeting and says, effective immediately, we're going to be a mentoring organization. There's a lot that goes into it. And so over the years, I mean, I went to work for Louisville in 2002. I came to the colony here in 2009, and I saw the value and the things that we were able to do in Louisville, and I wanted to kind of take it to the next level. So we introduced it here, and, you know, we're a big culture organization. We call it a high performance learning culture, and mentoring is a huge part of that. We're a growing organization. We're bringing a lot of people in. And one of the things that's probably unique about our hiring is we hire people mostly experienced from other organizations. So we have to have kind of a high speed, low drag way to teach them kind of our way of doing things. But the other part of it is while selective or traditional mentoring is very, very important, it's hit and miss. One of the goals behind this is I wanted to make sure that everybody in the organization, new hire and newly promoted, had the opportunity to benefit from a mentoring relationship. And I think that was really the motivation to formalize it and get it to where everybody could have that experience. And we've had very good success with it. I think just about everybody in the organization will probably tell you what it's done for us. This is just one way, though, and I kind of want to make that clear. And before I go any further, this document is free. It's on my website, fireserviceleadership.com. So you can go there. You'll see my book and go to all products, and it'll go to this. And you got to put in a little information. That's the only way I can make it work. But my goal was try to get this in every fire department in America. And I stopped counting at about 5,000 downloads. But I'm that passionate about mentoring, and I think I say mentoring is the future of fire service leadership and learning. And I honestly believe that. I believe departments that embrace a formal mentoring process are going to have a much easier time navigating the challenges that we have and will continue to have versus those that don't. So that's kind of a little bit of the background. We've had it in place since I've gotten here. We've tried to make improvements to it. A lot of the members have taken on and created kind of task books and improved our mentoring evaluation things. And we have some fantastic mentors. It's gotten to a point in our organization where we don't have to make people be mentors. That's kind of a rite of passage. And we have kind of a waiting list that say, hey, I want to get to the point where I can be a mentor and work with our new people. So that's a little bit of the background. Like I say, this is just kind of one way. There's a million different ways. Mentoring is kind of like leadership. It's all in how you define it. It can be a very positive influence, and there's a lot of ways to define it. But we basically look at it as a one-on-one relationship where you have a mentor and I call it a learner, and there's a positive influence there. And it's somebody that kind of sees that you understand the culture, the environment, and even the tasks and the techniques and the tactics, and then prevents people from drifting towards failure. So that's a little bit of kind of how our system is set up. And like I say, we've had great success with it.
So in reading through this, and I encourage anyone out there to go, like Scott said, this is free and it's a great read. There's a lot of really, really good tidbits of information in here. So I encourage anyone to go out there and get this. But as I was reading through it, and it kind of spoke to, I don't know Chief Rice well, but I know of him. I've spent a little bit of time around him socially and professionally, and there's no one out there, I think, that probably exhibits as much passion. And I don't think anyone that knows him would dispute that, whether you agree with his philosophies or whatnot, but he's certainly invested in this career and this profession. So when reading this document, there's a lot of language in there just talking about support from the top and about buy-in from the troops, making sure that everyone down the line. I laughed because you had a passage in here, a page in here where it talked about, there's two conversations, the mentor in a station that goes to a station officer and says, hey man, I volunteered to be a mentor, and this is what I'm trying to do. And, it's got all the positives, like this is a perfect scenario. Or it could go like this, which is, hey man, why'd you volunteer for something? And I ain't got time for all this. Don't screw nothing up, that sort of thing. So, I loop this into Chief Rice only because for a person to go out and promote or be a advocate for what you're trying to do, you couldn't ask for, a better person on your behalf. So I throw that to you, Chief Rice. So, obviously you've been at the colony for a while, and it's always interesting to me when you bring, so I think it's a challenge for a chief to bring someone from another organization in in a leadership role, which you do. You came there as a battalion chief, right, Chief Rice?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So when you come in, so I think that's hard. I think it's hard for the fire chief. I think it's hard for the individual, and there's a barrier, I guarantee, because we're all critical by nature, where we're going to sit around and poke holes and everything. Oh, what this guy's going to come in and teach us how to, that sort of thing. And but so what, relating, I guess, to that challenge, but where you're at now and really pushing this program and making this as successful it is, and it's very successful. The time that I spend around your people, and I got to do that quite a bit through that vaccination clinic and at TMS, but man, it's a positive group. They truly enjoy what they do, and they seem to have a good time around one another, and seem to really enjoy hanging out. But Chief Rice, kind of speak to that. What's your role in? I know you're the training guy, but what's your role in pushing this out, and how's that experience been?
Thanks, Chief. My role obviously started 6 years ago, and with the colony, and when I went into that process coming in as an outsider, it was definitely unnerving. You're leaving what you knew. Luckily, I had a lot of conversations with Chief Thompson, Chief Stevens, and knew and understood kind of what I was getting myself into. And through that process was unabashedly myself, and they seemed to like that. And so that was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I can do this. I can be passionate, and I'm not going to have to apologize for it. And so for me, it was a really good marriage. One of the interesting things that I want to kind of bring up is, 6 years ago when I came on, Captain Grahl was a fireman. He was a senior fireman on what was Truck 3 at the time, in my battalion. And, the nice thing through this process, the nice thing working for the boss is, when we promoted people, if they can stay within the battalion, we've tried to do that. And we've where a lot of other literature might have said, no, you got to send them somewhere else. They got to have a fresh start. Captain Grahl is one of the shining examples of when, he promoted to driver just a little bit after me getting there to AO. He stayed on my battalion, and then he promoted to captain a couple years later and stayed in my battalion. And so you talk about a mentoring relationship. It's been twofold. I think I've probably shared a lot with him, more informally, getting to know me. And Chief Thompson talks about it in his packet about reverse mentoring. And I received a lot of that from him because he really kind of brought me up to speed as far as the organization, the history, and kind of where we were at. As far as pushing out the packet and some of those things, fact of the matter is the Colony Fire Department was already doing this. What Chief Thompson did with these 49 pages is kind of put words to maybe what you were doing unknowingly. And so honestly, at the time, Captain Grahl was on light duty, so he's riding the car with me, which was another great opportunity for me to have him as a fit and right beside me in our conversations, and the time spent, I think has been immeasurable as far as the positivity. But we talked about it and said, hey, how can we do this? And like anything with the fire service, you can't push out 49 pages and just say, read it. We broke it down into bite-sized pieces. We had them, the company officer would review it and then present it. And then there was a list of questions and things that they would do to kind of spark the conversation. That's most of mentoring. The packet and everything that's in here is great and fine, but like Chief said, it's not a policy that you can just push out and say, we're going to do this. it's based on relationships. And so I'll go back to, Captain Grahl almost 6 years ago as my senior fireman on a truck company. And now he's working for me as one of my tried and true, company officers. So that's what has to happen. And you have to have people in position that understand that and care enough about that to get that done.
But don't you, so one of the things that I kind of infer after reading this and that Scott puts in here, first of all, he makes a statement that, and sadly, I think it's true. And it's one of those that you go in, we almost do that way. And that is when you talk about spec and rigs and how much time, hours and effort and energy that we go into making sure that everything to the nth degree, that the finest detail on an engine is squared away. And are we doing that with people? And I think sadly, the truth of that is there's a lot of organizations that certainly aren't. And I lean towards, I think I can fall into that trap sometimes in that, we do spend, I handle a majority of the purchasing in this organization, and everything's about all the details and the fine print and the warranties and the POs and all of those sort of things. And you tend to take the personnel for granted, and assuming that they're getting what they need because you see them out there and they're busy. I guess we can fall into that trap of if you're not hearing anything, that's good news, right? Because everything must be operating. But this is really, a kind of a groundwork for being intimately involved, and it speaks not just the new firefighter that you bring in, but all along the way in the ranks. And Captain Garrett, I throw that to you because Chief Rice, alludes to the fact that you've come through this as a captain now, so you've come through this at a firefighter level, driver level, now as a captain level, but so you're getting your hands in all aspects of this process. And what's your thoughts or your successes or the things that your payoff at the end of the day, if you will?
So to back up a little bit and kind of talk about something that you mentioned a second ago about the firefighter level, it being easy to poke holes in things that maybe come from the training chief or even down from administration. And that's really kind of the part that I enjoy about my job is I get to tailor the message and really work at a micro level to what people's strengths are, so that if at a firefighter level they can look at something, just the packet as a whole, our mentoring packet, and not really understand what value they have to it or what they're good at, then I can come in and really, because I work with them every day, so I know what their strengths and know what their weaknesses are. So I get to show them what their role in that is. And that's really what kind of builds the buy-in. And then maybe it's not so easy to poke holes in it because they know exactly where to put effort in. So then that's where they begin to start buying in. And to what Chief Rice said a second ago about being able to stay on the same shift as I promoted up. Two of the guys on my company now are guys that I have were on the truck with, and now we're still on the same company. And talking about mentoring and leadership, both, that mentoring and leadership are kind of like parenting. You have to decide that you want to accept that role. Doesn't mean that everybody's right for it, and it doesn't mean that everybody should do it. But I guess kind of what's gone easy for me is that you get to the point, if you wait until you promote to decide that you're going to do those things and then create a standard, you get kind of the thing like, oh, you've changed after you've promoted. And that really hasn't happened with me because I kind of decided a long time ago that that's what I wanted to be. And then there has to be ownership on the backside of that. It's not leadership and mentoring are kind of thought of as like a light switch. Like I'll turn it on whenever we're, doing the drill or when we're at the station, but it's not really that easy. It's something that, it has to be a part of you. It has to be who you are. Guys can call me all the time outside of work. We do things that aren't even fire related. It's just life in general. And that's kind of, been my experience going from senior guy to driver, to now officer, still a new officer, just over a year. But it's been great to stay with the people that I've been with, and it puts me in a really good position to offer a lot of these things. Just because I know the people that I've worked with and we've been together for a long time.
Scott, everyone is going to get mentored. I think we'll all agree on that. Whether it's good or bad and that's where I think the proactive part of this comes from, and certainly where your vested interest in the success of your organization. But I think that's an important thing for someone to kind of slow down and understand, is that it's going to happen. You can have some kind of ability to control what the outcome's going to be or what you're looking to get at the back end of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hear all the time, if a fire department has 5 stations and 3 shifts, let's say we have 15 different ways of doing things. And maybe some look at that as positive, but as the person responsible at the end of the day, I want consistency, I want predictability, I want a certain level of uniformity. I want to make sure that if it's squad 18 or truck 14 or engine 11 or 12, that the citizens in the colony are going to get a basic level of service. I always talk about survivability being based on the situation versus the philosophy of the officer or the battalion chief. Vent enter search is too dangerous, vertical vent. And so one company does it and the other doesn't. To me, that's unacceptable, and people will disagree with that. So the only way I think to get that predictability and to become an organization, not 15 different organizations, is number one, you got to have some standards and clear expectations. And that's a big part of mentoring, is you got to have the right people, the ones that are invested, like Chief Rice and Captain Grahl and many others. Then you got to give them the tools. They have to understand what the end result looks like. And we have a saying here, and people have heard it before: start with the end in mind and why, if not this, what? So my question would be, if you're not mentoring your people, then what are you doing to make sure that we're focusing on a common mission? We understand the purpose, the core values, that corrective actions are done in a way that's consistent, uniform. And then when we come off the trucks at the task level, we're doing things the way that's the best way to kind of do it. And so all that ties into it, and giving them a formal process kind of gives them, it's not the answers, but it's kind of the guidelines, the box to be within in mentoring those points. And our guys have done a great job with that. I think now they all see the value with that and take ownership of it. And it's kind of taken over and it's just become part of us. But I don't see how you get any level of uniformity or consistency without having that relationship. And I want to differentiate a little bit between mentoring and coaching also. Coaching is kind of the here and now. And I think we do a lot of that in the fire service. Hey, you're doing a great job with that, or, try this and let's do it again. And that's kind of called purposeful practice. So coaching is addressing the here and now. And that's a big part of mentoring. I think all mentors are coaches, but not all coaches are mentors. The thing about mentoring is focusing on long-term success. Chief Rice, working with Captain Grahl, could start to position him for his officer's role way back when Captain Grahl was a senior person. And I know Captain Grahl is doing the same thing now with his firefighters. He knows them enough to say, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to do? I want to be a captain on the truck, or I want to be a captain on the squad. Well, Captain Grahl can give him a very clear outline from an attitude standpoint, a skills standpoint, whatever. This is how you get there. So I think that's why it really comes to get that consistency and predictability, and to give your people a map to achieve the things that they want to achieve. And everybody has different goals professionally and personally.
So somebody had, I guess, posted on social media, but I just want to mention again. So the document we're referencing today is called Formal Mentoring for the Fire Service. And it's at fireserviceleadership.com. That's Scott's website. And as he mentioned earlier, you're going to navigate through to get the document. It looks like you're purchasing something, but you're not. This document is free, but just you plug in your name, email address, that sort of thing. And then Scott will call you next week about your warranty on your auto on your car that's expired. So no, I'm just kidding. But the document's out there, fireserviceleadership.com, and it's called Formal Mentoring for the Fire Service. You know what, Scott, you said something there that I think again is it's obvious when you sit and think about it, but at first pass, we're looking for, you know, obviously the immediate success. If you bring a new person in the organization, Chief Rice, you bring that person in, you as a battalion chief, or Jesse, you as a station officer, can watch the progress of that person and certainly talk to whoever's assigned to that person, or you can understand whether they're catching on, whether they're able to perform tasks, how well they're learning their district, can they talk on the radio, do they know where equipment is, you know, all the things that we start out on a very, very basic level. But long term, there's a huge benefit to this, and I think that's I struggle with long term projects because I have no I'm a short term person. I like mowing the lawn because I know what the problem is. I can see my progress as I do it. When I'm done, it looks nice and I know what I did. I think I'm not suited for a person that works in a lab trying to cure cancer and can work for 30 years and never really see the result of anything. You've contributed a piece to something much, much bigger. And I'm not minimizing any of that work by any means, but there's a long-term benefit to what you're trying to lay the groundwork here, Chief Rice, right? Because you're setting up the young firefighters, the company officers, the next battalion chief, the people that are going to take your place or run this organization after we're all gone, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know, I've always said, and it didn't really work out this way, but if I did my job right, no, it'd be working for me in a couple of years. They'd all have moved on and promoted and done those things. And you really got to look at it like that. I've lucked out. You know, almost all the guys that I've got working in our battalion were firemen at some point in the same battalion. And again, I do think I would challenge most administrations to moving people and giving them fresh starts. I think when we do that, we lose the time that we've had with them. You know, you wouldn't take your child and go, well, you've now made it to 15. I'm going to move you out to another family. Like you maintain that relationship over the course of their life. And so that is kind of what, you know, we've been doing as far as the mentoring. One of the big things I think for me with the packet that made I'll just show it here. It's on, what is it? Page 17. It's the 6 R's, right? And it talks about a lot of our how we develop and how we teach and learn and whatnot. And that's been a big thing for me with training and trying to, as I get out with the company officers on all battalions, explain to them like the difference between drilling and training and, you know, being able to look back. I think a lot of the times in the fire service, our training and our mentoring is solely focused on the brand new guy. And then we just, okay, that's it. You've got everything and you've passed your year of probation and we move on and we don't give them anything else. And you have to come back at every skill set level. Captain Grahl was challenged within the first 6 months of being on the job with some performance issues following a drill. And, you know, people can look at that negative, but when we put somebody through the paces of a performance improvement plan, the goal is to improve performance. And so that was one of those times where I remember him coming to the office, pulling the door shut and going, what am I doing? You know, I didn't think I'd be doing this at month 6, you know, this is uncomfortable. This is not fun. And I had to say, hey, listen, man, this is the job. This is the accountability part, you know, and I got you and you're going to be fine. And he did. The performance definitely improved from those folks, but he had to have the courage to do it. And we had to have that relationship for him to trust me to say, I'm not putting you off on an island. You know, you're going to have to do the hard stuff.
There's a lot of analogies out there with professional sports or team sports and how that relates to the fire service. But, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think of when I go through this is that, you know, you'll hear, it doesn't matter. It matters not what you're interested in. If you like football, baseball, they all talk about, if you listen to sports, you read any articles about your favorite team or trades and personnel and whatever, but they always talk about that strong person in the locker room. They always talk about, yeah, that guy can come in and he can shoot a 3-pointer and he's great at defense, but he's a cancer in your locker room. And it's funny because I don't think sometimes we understand that enough around like just how problematic that can be in what we're trying to do every day, which is, go out and deliver a great service in a very dangerous environment and do it as best we can, as healthy as we can, send everybody home, all those sort of things. But without focusing on this mentoring and really curving people and molding them into the culture, not the culture to them, but them to the culture. But that's what it is. I mean, if you've got someone and you're not investing that time or taking conscious steps to go out there and make a difference to get them to come into who we are and make them who you need them to be, it's your cancer in the locker room, right? Captain Grahl, and I mean, at a station level, certainly battalion chiefs see it when they're dealing with 4, 5, 6 fire stations. But just in a group of 5 people, when there's someone in there that ain't gelling, it's a struggle.
Even down at each person, deep down, if you have that guy, they know that they're that guy. And even to reference what Chief Rice said a second ago, when you're dealing with people, it's always messy. It takes time. It's effort. There's a lot of conversation. It's never a straight path. There's always things you got to figure out and work with people. And the hardest thing that a lot of guys or mentors shy away from is always the harder conversations. Hey man, that's not the standard. And the thing about it is they already know that that's not the standard. And it may be painful at first to talk about, and may come with a little bit of embarrassment. I get it. And we're really good at the fire service with criticism and pointing out being under the standard. And then we're not so great at the follow through. But if you're able to take a guy and say, we've spoken about, that's not the standard of our company. This is where we want to be. These are the areas that we need to work on. And then you put forth the effort. A lot of times that when things look like work, firemen tend to shy away from those things if it's not on fire. But when you put forth that effort and you get them to where they need to be, they appreciate it. And then you talk about what really builds trust. It's those things. I talked with Chief Rice a long time ago. We talk a lot in the colony about, building courageous firemen. How do you do that? What creates courage? And to me, or what I've kind of figured out is that you have to have an environment of vulnerability. Just because you're under standard doesn't mean that there's immediate repercussion. There's a process that we can work through. And if you're able to come to me and say, hey man, I need help with that, or that's not where I want to be. And we can work on that and be vulnerable to one another at what we're not good at, that builds courage. You and I doing something together will raise the standard, even though you may not be good at it. So when you're dealing with people, all those things are difficult, but over the long term, like we're talking about, they build a strong team. And I think ultimately that's the goal.
Scott, you mentioned, you've got several different examples of different types of mentoring, but one of them that is probably, and we do it too, because we typically, the majority of people that we hire come from other departments, but reverse mentoring. So talk a little bit about reverse mentoring. And I think in your organization like ours, because you always have that blended, and you're typically bringing in experienced guys, but there's some value in the reverse mentoring for sure.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. We just brought on a whole new group of new hires for Station 5, and I think most will agree collectively it's probably one of the best groups. And they all have different backgrounds and things they came from. And I know for a fact that each company officer, each senior man or woman that we have respects that. It's not, hey, shut up, we don't want to hear how you used to do it. This is our way of doing it. Now, in order to get that consistency that I think is important, we have to direct that. but there's always things that we can learn. And it adds to the organization and diversity when we can do those things. Rather, it's we have a paramedic only program, and the things that these paramedics have brought to our organization, and Chief Rice and both Captain Grahl, we never imagined. It's mind blowing, and the level of ownership that they've taken. And not saying we've had bad paramedics, we have great paramedics, but they're firefighters, and that's where they want to invest their efforts. And I certainly understand that. But these paramedics who really don't have an interest in that have brought stuff from the outside into our program that I believe has taken fire-based EMS to a whole new level. And we know that because we're constantly getting recognized. Not that that's what they do it for, but we hear from trauma surgeons and stroke doctors and patients and nurses, receiving nurses that are constantly saying, hey, you guys have tapped into something. So there's a ton of value in that. And I think the mentoring process capitalizes on that reverse mentoring is, we want to bring you, first of all, we want to make sure it's a good fit, that you understand our culture and what's going to be expected. And we train every day, and we have a fire first preparedness philosophy. But if that matches and you're into that, then help us become better. And I think each member that we bring into the organization adds value, some more than others. But I know for a fact that our officers, our battalion chiefs, our senior members, they welcome that versus discouraging it. I think that's a big part of this learning culture.
But that, I've said that on this program numerous times when I had gotten out of the police academy and was a police officer, and I went to my first phase of training. I got in a car with one of the best field trainers that I could ever have gotten. And she was very candid with me to say, you just got out of one of the best training academies on the planet. And I trust you to make the decisions you need to make in critical situations. Don't look to me to tell that, I'm not going to tell you that you should pull your gun or point it at someone, or that should have been covered in this academy. And you need to have the confidence to get out and make those decisions, because no one out in the field is going to differentiate between you and me, between having zero experience or having 10 years of experience. The guy that I was in the academy with, he started on a different phase of training, and his guy was an ex-Marine, and basically told him, don't talk unless I tell you, and don't touch this, and don't do this, and don't do. Anyway, but his barrier was huge, because he's in a very there's a very high level of expectation of whether police or fire. When you step off of a rig, there's a very high level of expectation for your performance. And if you're encumbered by this being beat down, or in that culture where we don't value what you have to say because you haven't been here long enough, you shouldn't talk. Now, I don't want to get into the whole, yes, I tell my son all the time, be seen and not heard, and all those sort of things. So I'm not detracting from any of that, but I am saying that from a culture standpoint, and from what we're trying to get the best out of people, is you've got to find some kind of balance in there to make sure that people are comfortable to do what you're paying them to do. We expect you to be a highly functional member of a team that in 10 minutes you could be called out to do the most horrific thing you're ever going to do in 30 years. But I need you at that level. And that's the kind of culture, the environment, and what I think this mentoring thing gets people to and gets them to perform.
Let me just comment on that, and I'd like to hear from Chief Rice and Chief Grahl with a follow-up. But if you think about it, the greatest investment that a fire department makes is in its firefighting capabilities, what we spend on fire engines and firefighters and protective clothing. And then we restrict that with policies and procedures by saying we're not going to be aggressive, we're not going to do this, and pretty soon we've taken that capability and we've muzzled it down to where we're not using what we're capable of. I know, and the reason why I'm comfortable with us being an aggressive operation, first of all, we have to be because of the types of homes we have, the Fox boxes. But I know that today on A shift, B shift, and C shift, that the battalion chief is going to invest in the company officers. I know that's going to happen. They're going to position them for success. I know each company officer and each step up is going to invest in making sure that their company is positioned for success. I know that the senior man or woman and that mentor is going to make sure that the person that they're responsible for is ready to go to work. So knowing that without question, I'm very comfortable in asking each of our members to maximize what's been given to us. You know, let's be aggressive problem solvers. Let's do what you're saying. Let's show up in that first 10 or 15 minutes, punch it in the mouth, and do what we need to do. Now, you know, I believe a lot of reasons why fire chiefs put so much restrictions on their organizations because they don't trust them. They don't trust them to make those decisions. But I know that if we go out and we have that career event tonight, that Chief Rice and Captain Grahl and the other captains that are on duty, their intention is going to be to do the right thing. And I know that they've invested on the front end to prepare for that. We say mentally, physically, mechanically, procedurally. And man, that's a great place to get to. But I'd like to ask kind of Chief Rice and Captain Grahl from an operation standpoint, from going out and doing the job, how that mentoring relationship helps build your confidence in your folks and the other companies in the city as far as delivering somewhat of a uniform or standard level of service. Chief Rice, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, obviously the time that you spend with somebody in conversation and getting into their head, lays the groundwork for that. I'll give you a really great example, and this is some of the things that, if you're not doing this in your organization, you can't expect the autonomy on the fire ground. So the doorbell rings and Mrs. Smith is there with whatever request, and the junior person runs down and grabs the door. Do they just take all of the information, say, we'll be right there, and then go let the cap know we got to run? Or do they go find the captain and say, hey, Cap, Mrs. Smith is down here. She's asking this. He's got to walk down. It's this whole big, huge bureaucracy. Like, anybody should be able to make that call. Somebody's down there and they say, hey, I need help with my smoke detectors are going off. Not a problem. What's your address? We'll be right there. And then we just take the run. And so if we can build those relationships to create that trust, that capitalizes itself, and you can find that on the fire ground. It's the same thing. I mean, and I had this with Captain Grahl at the time when he was a senior man. At that time in our procedures, he rode outside control, or OVM, and so he was my eyes and ears on the other side of a structure. And I have had that relationship with him on the fire ground. So if he says something or sees something, I've had 5-6 years with him coming up through the ranks, riding that position. Now our truck officers, or even sometimes SWAT officers, will ride that position. I still find him there. And we utilize that position, if there was a mayday or there was something like that, to maybe take over that rescue and manage that. But that all goes back to day one, setting the tone for how much you trust your people and what you expect out of them, and just laying that out.
Captain Grahl, your thoughts on that?
I feel like a lot of the building trust and confidence in people, I don't want to say 100%, but a large majority of it is proactive. I know at the officer and company level, it's easy to, when you have people in your charge, to just expect them to bring all of the information to you and you make a quick decision. And I try and keep, every shift that we go, pretty fresh in my mind that to build confidence and trust in people, it shouldn't be my goal for them to bring all the information to me. It should be me to early on set an expectation, be sure that they understand what the standard is, and push authority down to them. If they're in Chief Rice's example, if they're the person answering the door, that they should have all the knowledge and comfort in making that decision, and then letting me know what decision they made. And if it's the wrong decision, we can just adjust, talk about it and adjust what we do. There are some times on the fire ground when there's unexpected events happen, and we can deal with those as they come along. So there is time where you just have to give an order and some things have to be followed. But a large portion of it to me is working to put those people in a spot where they feel comfortable knowing what the department's vision is and meeting that. I mean, giving them the authority to make those decisions to me should be my goal.
One of the things, and I really love this, Scott, and this is the first thing that I cut and robbed from your presentation, but to to pass this along to our people. But on you've got the orientation warning. I thought that information is so spot on because and I think it speaks to the mentor's responsibility. And we have a lot of people that on our side of things that volunteer to be the mentor, but I think you need the person that's got the great personalities, approachable, is makes people feel comfortable, eliminates the barriers that I was just referencing a little while. You need those people, but you also need some people that are courageous in making sure, like, for example, you say, not on the warning part, but, don't allow shortcuts, don't allow anything less than the best effort, don't allow them to drift towards failure, don't allow bad habits to form inside or outside of the firehouse. That outside of the firehouse thing is huge, because I think that your role as a mentor, again, is I'm levying the expectations of you to be a Colony firefighter, a Louisville firefighter, but you're also representing the fire service. And I don't take that lightly. And I tell everyone that when they come to work here, I park a car in front of my house as Louisville Fire Department, so I can assure you everyone on my block knows what I do for a living. I forfeit my right to go outside and do stupid things, and I can't throw beer cans in the street or get in an MFing contest with my neighbor. But I also tell people this is that you come to the Colony Fire Department, and you know what? You put a sticker on your truck. I would be shocked if anyone didn't. You're going to put that on your social media that you're a firefighter and what you represent. And I'm proud of everyone for doing that. We want that. We want you to be proud and be invested in your career. But because of that, your family, friends, and the people down the street know what you do for a living. And I think that's part of what the mentor needs to make sure is that when you've got a 21-year-old, 23-year-old, because we've all been there, and just we're all fortunate in that we didn't have cell phone videos and all the stuff that they got out now. But your job is to make them understand how valuable you are, not to this organization, but to the fire service as a whole. And you're representing it all the time. And you can't take that lightly. And so I think a lot of what I read in here, and it speaks to that. When I go into that orientation warning, the reason I liked it is because that's very candid. And you know what? Hey, guess what? We're gonna ring a bell, make a lot of noise. It's cool. It's excitement. There's adrenaline. This is gonna be an amazing career. But guess what? This shit's dangerous, and there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be detrimental to you, your mental health, your physical health, your family, your relationships, and all those sort of things. And you can't gloss over that. And so we need to have that conversation as well. And I like that. I like that because it's in bold, and it's very, very explicit in what it's telling people. This is what to expect. The one statement that I love in there was that understand you must take responsibility for your own personal well-being. The minute you assume someone is more concerned about your safety than you are, complacency is set in. That's huge. And I think, again, that speaks to, I think, what the role of this mentor is, and how important this person is in the organization to ensure the success of the next generation. And I like that. I like at the end, it says, now let's go meet your family and let the fun begin. But the people, I know, Scott, you're not short of people that want to fulfill the role as this important person. Tell us briefly, like in the Colony, if Terry McGrath walked into your office or into Chief Rice to your office, and I said, I'm interested in being a part of this program. I want to be a mentor. I want to be a guy that impacts the next person that gets hired in the Colony. What's that process? How do you onboard that person or make that decision?
Again, I'm going to let Chief Rice and Kevin Grahl, because I don't give any, other than the packet and the parameters. I let the BCs and the captains decide who is ready for mentoring. You know, we've erased the word fairness. You know, it's my turn to drive, or you suck at driving. Well, you know, and the same thing with mentoring. We've had to tell people, no, you're not ready. So I'm going to let them address how they choose their mentors and when they decide somebody's ready to fill that role, because I have very little input into that. Chief Rice?
So I will say this, and we had a unique opportunity, or we've had a unique opportunity, and it's one that will probably come to an end here in the next year, which is we were building firehouses and we were hiring a lot of people, right? And if you're an organization that's doing that, you don't have to mentor, but if you don't, you're going to have some massive problems when you build out. And so, this last year, whether it was formal or informal, I had 3 new company officers out of 4. We had 4 out of 6 drivers were new. And then we had God knows how many, firefighters and paramedics that have been new. So it's been an all hands on deck for the mentoring processes. As far as mine, I try to oversee, obviously, the battalion, and I provided the company officers some mentoring and some time. And some of that is both ways. The other day, we got a Zoom meeting on, and we just talked. Didn't really have much going on, but just said, man, I want to start opening up communication between the 5 of us, on a couple time a month basis. And so we're kind of starting to do some of those things. As far as the shift and the station things, that's left up to the company officers, and I would defer to Captain Grahl. We definitely have a lot of guys that do it, but I think it's because we're a training organization from day one. If you hire a person and your first priority is to show them where the coffee pot is, you've set the tone for your organization, right? If your first priority is, hey, let's clean the station, and not, man, I want to make sure you don't die today. Like, let's make sure you know how to work your pack and work your radio and do some of those things. Mentoring, it's not just not easy, it's expensive, right? If you do it right. So when we onboard somebody, they ride extra on the rig for a number of shifts until we sign them off. So that's extra staff. When we mentor them on our ambulances, they ride extra. When Captain Grahl, in the next year, we'll do step-up training, he'll be extra on the battalion car. And we'll pay for that. We have to. You're paying for it one way or the other. So you can either invest in it, or you can pay with disciplinary issues and terminations and all those ugly things that we don't like dealing with in a toxic culture. Captain Grahl?
So kind of what we've already defined before the question is, if somebody comes to me and says they want to be a mentor, that's the easy part, saying that you want to be a mentor, you want to have influence over somebody else. And kind of 2 things that, and one of these questions was something that whenever Chief Thompson's packet was put out to the department of what we came up with. But there's a couple of questions that I think that if you want to have someone in your charge or influence of somebody else, that you have to answer to some degree. And the first one kind of being, how willing are you to make someone else successful? What boundaries are you willing to go to? Are you willing to do anything? Are there some things that you're not willing to do? And everybody, that's going to be a little bit different for everybody else, but you have to have some sort of direction that you want to move. And then the second part is, what is the cost of leadership? And I don't mean it necessarily monetarily in the sense that Chief Rice was talking about it to a department, but at what personal cost is this going to be to you? And if you can't answer those 2 questions, then there's some more thinking and considering that you need to happen, or that needs to happen. But the other thing too, if you accept that or ask to be in a mentor spot, if you mean it, it should change your behavior. I don't think that someone's past should necessarily keep them out of it, but if there's marked change in their behavior and the way that they want to do things, it should move you to that degree to have influence in a fellow fireman, or as you promote up, all of those things should change. So it's a little bit longer of a process than just saying, I want to be a mentor. There's a little bit of mentoring that comes even just in that.
Yeah, and no, I was just going to dovetail because I did find it interesting, but Scott, you had included some information in here from Psychology Today, I guess, but it was talking about maturation and some different characteristics of people, and all that stuff was pretty helpful. It's very very all inclusive and a lot of great information. What were you going to say, Scott? I interrupted you.
Well, we've been kind of just talking about theories and concepts, but I want to make this a little bit more concrete with some of the proof. We probably let go an above average number of people during a probationary period. If by month 10, if they're not hitting the mark, then we have to make a decision. And through the mentoring process, we have enough documentation and enough investment to where we make those decisions. But of all the people we've let go, and I've kind of and I don't say that proudly, but if they're not good during probation, they're probably not going to be rock stars when they're off. But as we've done it, and I've got to make that decision, the first thing I ask them is, did we give you every opportunity to be successful? And without exception, they say yes. And they get up and they shake my hand and they leave it. And they know that they've been given the opportunity to be successful. And they didn't take advantage of it, or they weren't able to. So that proves that mentoring works. It's not guys getting pissed off and say, nobody told me, I didn't know, I wasn't aware. They know we require monthly mentoring sessions where they sit down and their mentor and their officer spends 30 minutes having a conversation. So that's number one. Number two is we had a few members of this organization that when I promoted them from firefighter to driver, there were members who were verbal saying, you're making a mistake. We made that decision, but because we had this mentoring process and some other things in place, they become some of the more respected members of this organization, and they're people that people want to work for now. Now, we had the thing in place. They still had to make a conscious decision to do that and listen to their mentors and be willing to play the game, if you will. So we've seen some concrete things, some results, and we've seen people who've been able to promote because they followed the path. The opponents of this are going to say you take away critical thinking, individuality, all those others. But again, I'll kind of, as we start to wrap up, say, start with the end in mind of not this what. If you're not investing in your people through informal mentoring, formal mentoring, whatever it is, what are you doing to position them for success? You get a 21 or 22-year-old person who says, I'm choosing that organization. I want to be a part of that. We have an obligation to prevent them from drifting towards failure. We always focus on protecting them on the fire ground, but we got to protect them in the firehouse and off duty to make sure that they don't make a decision that we can't help them recover from. They've now gotten married, they take on a mortgage, they have a kid, and then all of a sudden we have an officer or senior member who's allowed them to drift so far towards failure now that they've lost that job. And it's very difficult, I think, to get this same gig anywhere else. So that's all a big part of it. It's just having that positive influence. It's quality instruction. It's quality feedback. And as Captain Grahl said, it's somebody who's made the decision, say, yeah, I'm willing to invest in somebody for the long term and help them be successful. And the alternative is, we beat it out of them, and then we have unproductive members who become more of a problem, and then we got to deal with those. And that impacts the culture and everything else. So there are some concrete things that show that mentoring really does work and provide tremendous dividends if you make the investment.
So we're gonna start to wrap this up today. I thank each and every one of you for your time. And again, the document we've referenced the last hour, Formal Mentoring for the Fire Service, you can find that on fireserviceleadership.com by that's Scott Thompson. You can also find the Functional Fire Company, the New York Times best-selling book, but you can find that on there as well. It's a great read, and a lot of what he's and a lot of what this conversation has been about today will be in that book as well. I have no great ideas ever, but I do read a lot of stuff, and I have no problem throwing that out there. But in all seriousness, we do like to kind of throw it back to each of you just to say, all right, so give me a final thought or an idea or that little nugget of information. And also for Jesse and Chief Rice, if you don't mind providing maybe an email address that if somebody wanted to reach out to you specifically to ask you a question of a battalion chief or a captain or they're trying to solve a problem, maybe you could help them with, if you don't mind providing that as well. So Captain Grahl, I'll go to you first. You got a final thought?
Yeah, so my email address will be jgrahl@thecolonytx.gov. And one thing that kind of shaped from my senior position all the way up to officer, as the colony kind of aged, and we actually had some retirees coming up and went to different people's retirement, it always kind of bothered me that it always came up. We're losing 30 years of fire service today. We're losing, X amount of years. And it always kind of bothered me. And I try and keep in mind, it's my responsibility. I should be able to walk out the door tomorrow. And yes, you're losing an employee that invested an amount of time in the colony, but the knowledge that I've amassed should be passed on to the people that I work with every day. You should lose zero amount of experience when I walk out the door, at whatever year that is. And at the company officer, if you are a company officer, you are influencing someone. Hopefully it's the entire house. And you can choose to either be someone's excuse or you can choose to be someone's inspiration. And that's really the only two options that you have at the company officer level. If you're at a firefighter, a senior level or something, I mean, I guess you can exist and have the t-shirt and the sticker, but I don't think anybody really wants that. But, it's your decision, how you're going to influence positively or negatively.
That's excellent information. Chief Rice, how about you?
Last thing I would say, it's page 46, and it's all of what we call the company contribution exercise. It's probably a really great place to start when we talk about this, because sometimes we inappropriately apply mentoring to somebody that is friction or resistance, and there's some different things that need to happen. I lucked out with Captain Grahl. When you look at that page, I mean, he was a 5, which was a gets it. I mean, this guy is a young fireman, got it. And we spent many late nights talking Simon Sinek and all kinds of other, leadership stuff and mentoring things and kind of big brain in the organization. And for me, that cultivated a 6-year relationship that now I have him as one of my right-hand guys. And I'm blessed for it, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Yep, thanks for that. And Chief Rice, I'm sorry if somebody wanted to get a hold of you. I don't know if you had mentioned. Is there an email or somebody could get in touch with you?
Yeah, grice@thecolonytx.gov, and I'm normally pretty good about sending out any of the mentoring forms and. This packet or whatever else they need. Chief will normally push them to me, and I kind of have a little thumb drive worth of that stuff. So if you guys need anything, reach out. And the other part I would say is we're an open shop. You want to come have a cup of coffee and hang out for the day and see what it's about, and meet our folks and let me know and we'll get you sorted.
Great, thanks for that. Scott, how about it?
Mentoring, if you have an informal process, that's great. Selective mentoring, support it, go with it. If you make the choice to move towards formal mentoring, there's a few things that probably you need to think of up front. It takes commitment, it takes patience. And there's 2 reasons that I found tracking this over 20 years why formal mentoring processes fail. Number 1, there's no support from the fire chief. The fire chief's got to be all in. The worst thing that can happen is some kid, senior member, junior member, volunteers to be a mentor, walks into the firehouse and then gets what we're talking about. Hey, you dumbass, why did you volunteer? We're not helping you. Your program's dead. So it's got to come from the fire chief, and the organization needs to know it's going to be something that we're going to try to make work. The second reason why they fail is we don't provide enough tools for the mentor. we're asking them to take on this role. They should have a good understanding of our purpose, our mission, our core values, what the end product should look like. And the third reason is you pick the wrong people for the wrong reasons. Mentoring is a skill, it's an art. And so it's well worth the investment, but it can't, like I say, it can't be a policy. It can't be the program of the week. It's got to be a commitment by the organization. There's going to be resistance, so you got to be patient. The more that you get involved in the early stages, the more ownership there's going to be. I will certainly help you in any way that I can. And I know, as Chief Wright said, each member of our organization, but I would strongly recommend that anybody who wants to just really maximize the capabilities of their organization, at least give, if not this process, some process, give it a look and tailor it to fit your organization. And I promise you, if you stick with it and do it the right way, you will see the results, and it'll become part of your organization. And when it gets to that point, just a lot of really cool things happen. You can get in touch with me at scott@fireserviceleadership.com. I'm not real good at getting back. I'm a little bit of a procrastinator, but I will get back. It's just a lot of things going on. So any way I can help you, let me know.
All right, I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate you coming on today. Our next show is going to be, I believe, August 18th. Should have the cast of characters back, and then they can report on FDIC as well. We never end a show without saying, remember all the men and women out there in the armed services serving. Got a big anniversary of 9/11 coming up in September. A real tragedy out of Tucson the other day, and a couple, I think 3 people shot some EMS and fire out there. And it's a crazy world. I don't have to tell anybody who's serving in uniform that, but stay safe, be safe, and we will see you August the 18th. Thanks for tuning in.